Hi, Neil. Thank you so much for being here. For those that may not know, we have the pleasure of talking to Neil Sullivan this afternoon, recent, and I put in quotes, retiree as executive director for Boston Private Industry Council. And I just really first have to say, Neil, that you have had such a long and lasting impact in your role as executive director for Boston Private Industry Council that has made such a difference in the city of Boston. So I want to thank you
Great.
for that.
A mere 33 years in the role.
Mere
Yeah.
33 years.
And 10 before that in City Hall. So
Unbelievable.
It's a run. It's a run.
It is a run. It is a run, and being a servant leader as you have been.
Mm-hmm.
So, starting there, what does it mean to you? What does being a community leader mean to you?
living and working with the community doesn't mean you have to live there. I do live in Dorchester. There's a lot of ways to live in a community that you care about. I happen to have raised, along with my spouse Allie, 4 children, BPS from start to finish, Dorchester Y swim team. I happen to be that, but lots of people live and work with the community they serve in various ways. Because otherwise you can't lead by example.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the most powerful form of leadership from a community perspective.
So I'm sure you poured into your role as executive director, not only being a professional, but being somebody who really lives this work that you do.
Mm-hmm.
So when you think about the legacy that you have left, and you have left a legacy,
Mm-hmm.
what does that look like? What do you hope people will say?
So often I'm in a room with younger leaders, and many of them point out that they founded the organization they're part of, the organization they now lead or led previously, but the founder. I'm proud to be a sustainer. I knew the value of the Private Industry Council, the PIC. I'd been in the mayor's office as the mayor's policy director, Ray Flynn, for my 30s, quite an adventure. But as that wound up, as I began to understand that he was moving on, after we won a 3rd term with a 75% vote, the Clinton administration was coming in, and it was very clear to me that he was moving on. I had to decide, what do I really want to focus on? And the answer was jobs and education. It had to be not a purely public enterprise, and the PIC is a public-private partnership, tapped into resources beyond what city government was able to gather. And this whole idea of leveraging private sector engagement really attracted me. We had a thing called the Boston Compact, which even predated my time in City Hall, and I cared about sustaining that, the partnership among higher ed, business, the mayor, the school committee at the time, and eventually, in the late 80s, the teachers union. And that whole idea of collaborative leadership was really important to me. Pluralism is very important to me. You want to bring people together on common cause and not throw people out of the room because they don't agree with everything. And that's critical, because otherwise you can never put together majority support for anything. And it gets petty and mean if you don't tolerate differences, and pettiness, meanness is very corrosive.
So the legacy of the people, keeping people centered to this conversation around jobs, education.
Yeah.
And I'll say that's a legacy that you have definitely.
And it's a bit unnatural because particularly coming out of government, I knew that departments tend to focus on their own initiatives, their own projects, even in government, working across departments for common cause, even if it's the mayor's cause, it is not a no-brainer. So I was in that practice within government during my 30s, so as I turned 40 and it was clear to me that we were in transition, this seemed like a wonderful place to do it. In terms of legacy, sometimes I get asked that question. The answer is, every time I meet someone and they volunteer, they were a PIC intern in their 20s, their 30s, their 40s, their 50s. That's legacy. That's the importance of sustaining is that things happen over time. We're very impatient, we Americans, but if we take a long view, and I'm into the long view, I'm a history person. I taught history as a high school teacher in order to avoid law school coming out of college. I mean, I think about trends, the contours of history, and the patience, the arc of justice, and Martin Luther King's vision bends toward justice, but there is an arc to history that helps you understand the setbacks as temporal, and you need to develop the patience and persistence to achieve things over time.
Let's talk about employer partners.
Sure.
So you've had the opportunity.
Got one in mind? Got one in mind? Got one in mind, Candace?
You've worked with a lot of
Yes.
strong employer partners, and yes, including Dana-Farber over the years. So can you share a bit about the role Dana-Farber has played in your work with the PIC, and what it looks like really when an employer is leaning into the work that you've been doing at the PIC?
Yeah, and I think the answer is the same. It's the willingness to take a long view, and to blend workforce development priorities with service to the community. To not see them as separate. We're so either or in our culture. We need a little yin yang, you know, school, workforce development, short-term priorities, midterm priorities, long-term priorities, a strategy for each from a human resource perspective. I think that's what distinguishes Dana-Farber for sure, as well as 5, 6, 7, 12 other employers I could name. And then the willingness to try everything. The willingness to implement the next work-based learning plan because you're trying to accomplish something developmental, while still appreciating the fact that young people are going home with money in their pockets. And that might be why they came, but you take it to the next place. And then finally, your willingness to work with the PIC to identify late bloomers, hidden gems, particularly given the demographic changes in our city. Immigration, which is the Boston workforce's biggest asset, frankly, next to its education system. And frankly, those priorities integrate in ways that have rapidly evolved. So hidden gems, late bloomers, not everyone's going to be where they need to be at age 14 or even age 16. So your willingness to take in young people who might not otherwise be chosen, that's hugely important.
I love that you've used the terminology hidden gems because it's one that I use so often in this work as we're working with whether it's young people, whether it's adults in the community, and I often use that phrase with individuals right here at Dana-Farber who are flying under the radar and just when presented with an opportunity, we see that they're a hidden gem. And so I'm loving that.
Yeah, and I do like to compliment it with late bloomers because youth development, adolescent development is not age specific, it's experiential. And we've always known that there's a lot of trauma in the community, and that often delays personal skill development and awareness. And that can be accelerated. That's what adolescence is all about. It's the most volatile stage of life. And if we as adults understand that and realize where you are doesn't necessarily predict where you will be. And a phrase I often hear that gives me great joy is that experience was transformational. It's not a young person's phrase, it's what adults say.
Yes.
It was transformational. And whether it's hidden gems or late bloomers, that's the harvest for the work. Yeah. And the benefit for the community, the benefit for the economy, the benefit for society. You know, it's a win all around.
So listen, have you heard we're building a new hospital?
I don't read the papers.
Have you heard that news?
You know, I try to avoid controversy at all costs. Actually, now I'm quite aware of.
Yes.
I think it's one of the most remarkable things about the Healthcare Careers Consortium, which is as strong as it was 15 years ago when we started it all together.
Yeah.
This idea that competitors could collaborate,
Yes.
regardless of controversy,
Yeah.
and that there was a role called Workforce Development Director, particularly in the teaching hospitals, that was that midterm and long-term perspective that HR can't necessarily afford.
Yes. Yes.
And that's where things all came together
Yeah.
within the healthcare
And-
industry.
Yes.
And remarkable people such as yourself and Rachida and others have peers in so many different hospitals. And even when we might be in the midst of some controversy, that does not prevent collaboration.
It does not waver, that collaboration, that camaraderie.
Yeah.
I know, I love
Yeah.
that and I appreciate that. What do you think we need to be thinking about Dana-Farber's workforce development as we embark on this future cancer hospital and a new workforce, an expanded workforce?
Job descriptions that capture the evolution of work. Okay, I'm not gonna go on an AI riff, but work is changing rapidly. Understanding the skill base of jobs. Okay, jobs aren't going away. The need for new skills is coming on hard. And collaborating with schools, obviously higher education, but more immediately public education, high school education. You know, we can't lose people along the way. And adolescence is where we catch them, and then they support us for the rest of our lives.
Okay. Listen, this has been such a robust conversation full of just, I think, fantastic information that so many will be able to learn from.